Like Georgia has, the way they score, the yardage they put up. I mean, does that go into does that affect you, that you gotta, to some degree, match that to balance it?
We always take a team approach to the game, and there's a lot of communication that goes on between Coach Jones and myself and John Johnson, the defensive coordinator. I wouldn't say that it changes our offensive philosophy at all. I wouldn't say that it changes how we plan to attack their defense at all. But of course, when it comes to special teams and playing the field position game and all those different things that go into managing a football game, Coach Jones is in constant communication with us coordinators about the best way to do that.
When you look at Georgia's defensive numbers, I guess especially against the run, anybody who holds LSU to that small number of rushing totals is pretty impressive, and they've replaced so many guys. Is that maybe something that's natural? It takes a couple games to really kind of get settled in when you're replacing 7 or 8 guys or whatever it is they're doing.
Well, they're very talented, and they've been. I don't know exactly what they were like last year, but I can tell you what they have on the defensive front at the linebacker position is very skilled. And their secondary, while there are a couple of young players, again, they're very skilled. So they've done a good job defensively of limiting people in the run game and in the pass game too.
About the Fowler guy in their front seven, I know that there's a lot of great athletes all over this league, but for a guy who can play some nickel and then go off the edge and rush the passer and everything, especially for his age, it seems like that's a really impressive athlete.
Sure, he's extremely impressive. There are some reps where he's out there playing man-to-man on a slot wide receiver, and then there's other reps where he's rushing as a defensive end, putting a great counter move or spin move on an offensive tackle. So he's got a wide skill set, and we've made our guys aware of that and are preparing for that.
What would you say the confidence in the passing game is right now? It looked like obviously a couple of miscues last week, but that was last week. How are the guys kind of?
We're always confident, and sure, we have a snap and clear mentality. If we have a bad play, we clear it and look to the next play. Always look to improve upon all the details of the pass game, of the run game, of executing the offense.
How do you judge kind of snap and clear versus learning from a mistake? How does that?
Sure. Not repeating mistakes, I guess, is the best way to evaluate whether they've had a snap and clear mentality with learning from previous snaps or they're just repeating bad habits. And that's where we've come to stress habits this week and how we're playing the game and our effort and our body position and the fine details of our fundamentals and mechanics.
How much growth did you see out of the quarterbacks this week in practice? And how difficult is to judge how much growth there is until you see them in a game?
I think it comes down to game reps, and we can simulate conditions and looks in practice, but it comes down to what guys do when the lights go on.
I guess with the shakeup at running back, I guess health-wise, how is everything kind of there? Are there some younger guys that you feel better about the last couple of weeks? Maybe guys like Tom Smith who have been producing a little bit.
Sure, all those guys, Tom, D'Anthony, Summerhill, Alden Hill. I feel confident with their ability to execute the offense, and they've gotten good reps this week.
Well, Rajon being able to show he could kind of take 25, 28 touches in a game and still produce.
It was great to see. Rajon played a tough football game. He was dinged up, and he didn't blink. He came out in the second half, still ran very physically, finished his runs, was good in pass protection. I'm very happy with the process, with the progress he's made through the course of the season.
He's hitting the hole now. Is that what you mean by the physicality? It's like he was kind of running right in the holes like he had.
Sure, hitting holes and bursting through holes, but also lowering his pads at the second level and fighting for that extra yard or two, or knocking defenders backwards as opposed to absorbing hits and running east and west. He's finished runs with a north and south demeanor.
Mike, can you talk about starting games better? Think about that.
I have not.
Okay. Last 4 games, I think 2 fumbles and 2 points. How do you guys, take more advantage of your opening drives?
Again, focus on the details and focus on our habits and our fundamentals and protect the football. You can't do anything but stress it, practice it, and address it.
I imagine you guys use script plays, start games. Is that how you typically do things? I know you probably don't want to do it.
Maybe not. I don't know. Sure, we have a pretty good idea of openers and all that.
Coach, how much of a concern is it just to find a balance between being aggressive and being cautious? I if you look, he's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 6 quarters. It still doesn't seem like the big, that's not been generating more big plays, even though he's taking more risk. Is that makes sense what I'm asking. I mean, would you like if he's taking those chances? I mean, what's the secret to kind of make it increase the yards per attempt?
Sure, I don't. I wouldn't. I'd say there was one interception this past game that was a result of him throwing,
Taking one of those chances.
taking a risk. We're always going to emphasize being decisive. We're always going to emphasize rhythm in the pass game. So I am not concerned with his aggressiveness. It's a matter of just making good decisions and, frankly, vision. Seeing safety rotation, having good coverage identification, and reacting accordingly.
And we can see the quarterback numbers every week. What we don't see is, if the receiver was playing where he was supposed to be. I mean, how much of what's happened in the past game is a result of just having, 3 freshmen who are getting a lot of play in the
It's about timing and spacing, and whether it's the quarterback's rhythm being off or receivers being out of position. There's so much. It could be the protection up front that causes him to get flushed in the pocket. There's so many different things that go into the timing and spacing of a pass play that it's hard to put a finger on one aspect of it. So I'd say we always talk about all 11 hats being on the same page. Executing is one, executing as a unit, and that's where execution in the pass game will come.
And you never, with colleges especially, you never like to hear boos in the stands. I mean, you heard some of that on Saturday. How do you handle Justin? I mean, a guy who's doing his best, on the practice. How do you address it with him at all for his middle approach?
Again, as a player, you're so locked in. As a coach, you're so locked in. I don't even know if you heard the boos. And sure, if that was the case, that's disappointing. Because he's out there giving great effort. But hey, again, that comes with the position, comes with being here at the University of Tennessee and having a high expectation of ourselves. I'm sure when we don't execute, we're the first people to be disappointed, and so hey, it's part of the deal.
I know that there's so many multiple defenses in college football these days. That's growing all the time, so it may not be as big a deal as it used to be. But I guess facing a base 3-4 versus facing a base 4-3, how many things does that change for either a game plan or the way you attack something, or is it just being aware of it?
There's so much that goes into attacking a defense. As much as it's scheme, it's also personnel based, and finding the best personnel matchups and trying to accentuate what you might have in your favor there. So it's partially scheme and partially personnel.
Was that maybe not as much of a deal as it was in the past? Because it seemed like there's so many more, I don't want to say junk defenses, but different kinds of defenses than there used to be. How much? Maybe it's not as big a deal these days when someone has a base 3-4 or 4-3 because there's so many spreads and nickels anyway.
And so many different personnel, so many different types of fronts. Even with the different personnel groups, 3-4, 4-3, guys are getting into different spacing, whether it's odd front spacing, whether it's even front spacing, out of those different personnel groups. So you have to have a plan to attack it all.
Mike, your defense has given you some turnovers in some plus situations. You guys last couple weeks maybe haven't taken advantage of them. Is there one thing you can put your finger on as to why you guys maybe haven't been able to capitalize more on those kind of situations?
Yeah, taking care of the football. We need to do a better job taking care of the football at all times. I think as you look at red zone efficiency, as you look at points generated off of turnovers, at a minimum in some of those situations, we should be able to line up and take the field goal. And when we turn the ball over, you walk away with 0 points as opposed to 3, and not being able to move the ball to get to 7 points is something that we stress. So we're always emphasizing getting touchdowns in the red zone, but at the same point, at least having 3 points in the back line.
As your team, you feel like your guys have kind of picked up on that the last couple of weeks, how costly it is when you guys do get a turnover and create a good situation for yourselves, but can't catch it in kind of the margin of error.
Again, if you go up into our team room, you'll see our plan to win, and one of those plans to win is scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Our guys have known since, not just since we started the season, but since training camp, since spring football, that's really important. We spend a lot of time practicing in the red zone, and we need to execute that in the red zone.
Mike, when you look at this offensive line, have you been around one that